Hey! Welcome back to my channel. I know it's been a while, 1 year or 2 years. Some people have been commenting like, where are you? I don't know if your channel is active anymore. I'm here. Life was just lifing and I couldn't focus on YouTube. And I got married, so getting to know someone takes a while. He's not Portuguese because the Portuguese men did not give me any opportunity. They left me out in the streets. Single, mingling with nothing. He lived in a different country, so I had to fly a lot. So investing in that relationship and also planning a wedding, getting married, that took a lot of energy. But now I'm through that tunnel. And yeah, now I can make YouTube videos again because I really love it. And I realized that I really miss being in front of the camera, and this video might be all over the place. Let's get into the meat of the matter, as we would say in Jamaica. Three years since I moved to Portugal. Oh my god, I can just reminisce on when I was making my vlogging videos of moving to Portugal. Wow. So for those of you who are new to my channel, I moved to Portugal 3 years ago to study a master's in film after completing my bachelor's of science in anthropology and management studies in Jamaica. So fast forward, it's been 3 years. I wanted to share my experience of living in Portugal and giving you a literal real life idea of my experience. I say mine because I know sometimes people might come for me to say oh, I didn't experience this during my time in Portugal. Firstly, I'm gonna talk about the culture. The Portuguese culture is very rich, it's very beautiful, and I think it's a culture that it's more relaxed compared to all their cultures in Northern Europe and Central Europe. Portugal for me is a very good mix of where I'm from, Jamaica, the Caribbean relaxed vibe with, for example, Central Europe. It's not as laid back as Jamaica, but it's not as not laid back for example Sweden. So things are much slower paced than Sweden, but not as slower paced like Jamaica. So it's a nice mix. So the culture is basically grounded upon this idea of taking things a little bit slower, but it's not done intentionally. I feel like Portuguese people are not as overly concerned about doing things fast. Maybe, for example, the London culture is, or Londoners might be. So because of that, you might find that waiting in a line for customer service may be longer when compared to waiting in Sweden or waiting in Norway. Just because people are not overly concerned about efficiency, I would say. It has its negative effects when it comes to bureaucracy and paperwork, because you get that same vibe and attitude when you have to really do stuff. But it's a positive thing when it comes to the lifestyle, because I realized that a Monday and a Friday can be the same in Portugal. I say that to say this, you can hang out with your friends at a restaurant, vibing, laughing together, chilling on a Monday night, but you can also do it on a Friday night. So being relaxed, having fun, getting together with friends isn't strictly reserved for the weekend. You can also do that in the weekdays too, which is really nice. I like that. People are also quite welcoming, I would say. Not as welcoming as the Caribbean, as where I'm from, Jamaica, but not as cold like people may be from Northern or Central Europe. So it's Southern European hospitality. So they're in the middle. I would say. And you will realize that the more you live there, because you will experience really nice people and also really cold people. Also really in-between people, like everywhere else in the world, of course. I'm just giving you an idea of the social culture. In Jamaica, I feel like we're really warm. So you will meet more warm people than cold people unless you do that person something really wrong and they might give it a shoulder. The next thing I want to talk about is a growing immigrant and expat population. I feel like more and more people are moving to Portugal. More and more people are retiring in Portugal or being digital nomads in Portugal, especially Lisbon. So if you are a non-Portuguese and you are moving there, you will find people from all over the world. The church that I go to currently, on one Sunday you can have people from 15 different nations in the service, which is really awesome because the congregation is not that big. Whether you consider yourself an expat or immigrant, that's up to you. There is not a negative thing attached to one word versus the other word. Recently, I learned just from an IG video, I know that's not a great source, that an expat is actually someone who just moved on their own without being like attached to a company or whatnot. So I feel like they're more immigrants. Yeah, but they are a mix. Anyways, the next thing is, what happens if I only speak English and I'm moving to Portugal and they speak Portuguese? Bruh. In Lisbon, you can survive without speaking English, but I wouldn't recommend it because I feel like if you're moving to another country, you should take some time to learn a language. Agora eu falo português ao nível A2. Antes eu não falo português. So yeah, I didn't speak Portuguese before, but now I hope if you speak Portuguese that you could understand my Portuguese. Yeah, but I didn't speak Portuguese before, and if you watch my other video, you will realize that. How I did that, I did Portuguese classes, which I would highly recommend, but I will only recommend you to start Portuguese classes after you've lived in Portugal for at least 6 months. If you came fresh to Portugal like fresh baked bread, I would not recommend you start learning Portuguese because you won't do that well in your classes. When you live in Portugal, believe it or not, you are subconsciously learning Portuguese. The words, the pronunciations. When you go into classes and when the teacher is speaking Portuguese, those words, those pronunciations will be very helpful in you grasping the curriculum and whatever you need to learn. I would recommend you start Portuguese like 6 months after you move to Portugal at least, or a year. That's also nice, and I feel like you will thrive much better in your lessons. I have to talk about my university experience because that's been a huge part of my time in Portugal. As you know, I moved there to do my master's. So after 3 years, I can finally say that I completed my master's studies. That's awesome. It actually took me 2.5 years, almost 3 years, I would say, to finish that, because writing the thesis, I would say took a year, and my classes was like 1.5 years, so it's like almost 2.5. Plus, if I factor in getting a date to defend my thesis, because after defending my thesis, actually getting that whole thing processed took several months. The reason why I chose Portugal is because the tuition was less expensive than the USA to do a master's in film, and it was like around the same price of a bachelor's in film in Jamaica. And at the time, and I think it's the same now, Jamaica did not and probably still does not have a master's in film program at any of the universities. This was a perfect mix of a good tuition price that was affordable, but I can talk more about my university experience if you want in another video. So after 3 years living in Portugal, I would also say that this country is mad, stunning, beautiful. I feel like I don't miss Jamaica that much because of living in Portugal. Portugal reminds me of Jamaica in a lot of ways, and it's funny because during my master's in film, I had to submit a classwork, a homework, a mini documentary a little bit, and it was about how much Portugal reminded me about Jamaica. The natural beauty here is super amazing. Anyone who's lived here, is living here, will tell you that. Not just that, the history here is really great, and you can see that in the infrastructure, the buildings. It has beautiful landscapes, it has beautiful beaches, it has the history, beautiful buildings. On top of that, I really love the weather, because I feel like you have 6, maybe even 7 or 8 months of like good weather, what people would describe as good weather, so warm to like autumn weather. Other 4 months are where it's actually cold. I would say even up until, I remember I was traveling and I came back to Portugal. I think I came back in November, either October or November, and I could still go to the beach. Like the water is cold, but to have a weather warm enough to be able to chill at the beach is really amazing, I would say. I think things start getting really warm in May, like May, June, July, August, September, October, November, or even April. And then the cold months, and then I feel like December sometimes is an in-between, and sometimes January can be like not as cold, and I feel like the colder months are more probably January, February, March, and April is sort of in between again, and then as it comes on it gets really warm, which is nice. Like coming from the Caribbean, I feel like it's the perfect balance, because Jamaica is super hot. It's too hot for me sometimes. Like when you're on vacation for 2 weeks in Jamaica and it's 28, it's 30 degrees, 32 degrees, it's nice, especially when you're coming from Northern Europe or like Central Europe, cold climate, and you come to Jamaica and it's warm, it's nice, you love the warmth. But when you live there, it's a totally different ball game. You can ask any Jamaican, they will say the same thing. So Portugal is nice because for several months I can get like the Caribbean weather, and then it cools down. That's what I like. It cools down. It gives me the break. Winter comes, it doesn't snow in Lisbon and in many parts of Portugal. Does it even snow in Portugal at all? I think like the super north. But in most parts of Portugal, it doesn't snow. So you get the winter without the snow. Some people may not like that, but for me, it's perfect. And when you're retiring and you're old and your knees are cracking, I'm almost 30 and my knees are already cracking. So when I'm old and my knees are cracking, the weather is good for that, you know? With all that said, I've been having 2 main struggles that I just can't seem to get over. The first one is the housing crisis. It's really terrible. And the second one is the job crisis. Like these have been my 2 nemesis. Would I say nemesises or nemesi? You know, moving to Portugal. The housing crisis, especially in Lisbon. I just only know Lisbon, so I can just talk about Lisbon. It's super difficult. If you're not willing to pay ridiculous amounts of money, it's like you can't find an apartment. And the job crisis fuels that. My experience, I'm gonna be plain and straight with you. I moved to Portugal because it was also my way of moving out from my parents' home. Finding my independence, the bravery, having my own apartment, everything, you know, that was the dream. My dream was crushed. I never lived in an apartment until I moved to Portugal because I grew up in a house. So I didn't care living in an apartment because that was the idea, to get my own apartment, to do my master's studies, whatnot. I come here and it's way more expensive than I thought. Just for context, I was moving in 2021, so prices were lower. Because when you Google things, it's not realistic. Unless you have a YouTuber like me just being upfront with you about prices, it's not realistic. I don't remember exactly how much the cost of an apartment was at the time. I don't remember, so I don't want to give you false information. I realized I couldn't afford that. On top of that, my alternative was a bedroom. So I thought that, okay, let's find a bedroom, let's save some money. A bedroom was so expensive to rent. I'm gonna be straight with you. The first place I lived was in Picoish in Avenidas Novas. I love Picoish. It's one of my favorite areas in Lisbon. I got a room and I paid almost 500 euros for the room. I paid 425 euros. But it was supposed to be like 475, something like that, and I got a discount. That was already high for me because I was burning through my savings because I had to pay my rent, plus buy food, plus pay my tuition, plus survive. So it was a lot. And when I found that place, I was like, wow, it's expensive. Like almost $500 for a room. Bruh. I lived there for 6 months, and the next place I lived was just like 5 minutes walk in Picoish as well, because I was looking in Picoish. First place I also had a legit contract, which was nice, and I had a good first experience renting a room because the landlord had no problem giving a contract, blah blah blah. This second place I lived in Picoish did not want to give a contract, and for me, remember, I'm just fresh in Portugal. So I couldn't understand, like, why can't you just give a contract? Because you're a Portuguese citizen, it doesn't affect you the way it affects me. When I don't have a contract, it affects everything. I can't get a junta, I can't get this, I can't get that. But anyways, I took it because the rent was 350 euros. And when I paid bills, it was an additional like 20 euros per month. I was paying like about 50 euros less there, which is a little bit, but it's substantial when you're living in Portugal when you don't have that much money. So I ended up staying there for a year, and then I moved to Alameda. I like Alameda because it's not that far from Picoish, and plus the area is still nice, a little bit more crowded, a little bit busier, a little bit more people, but still nice. And I rented a room again. That was 500 euros a month, all bills included. But remember, this is a room. The lady did not budge. She didn't want to give a contract. Plus, most places are not giving a contract, and that's very problematic. If they give you a contract, they want you to pay like an extra 200 euros a month for the contract so that they can use that and pay the government so they don't lose from the rent that you're giving them. I lived there, and then I found a place in Arroyos. Some people say Arroyos, some people say, which is literally just 5 minutes walk from Alameda. So I ended up doing like making an L. This place was 500 euros a month again, but my room was really massive. It was really big, but they didn't give a contract. And again, it affected me a lot. And when you live in Portugal, you realize having a contract is really important. So that has been my accommodation experience living in Portugal for 3 years. My takeaway from that is like how greedy landlords can be. That really shook me a little bit, the sort of inhumanity there is sometimes in landlords, because the rent prices are just going up and you're not getting a contract for anything. On top of that, they're profiting a lot. The government isn't profiting a lot. So I feel like that also misrepresents immigrants as well, because we are renting, we are paying. It's just not being shown. And also the government is not seeing how much we are investing in, for example, rent, because they're not getting taxes on that. I understand that the taxes are high when you're a landlord. I think it's like 28% the last time I checked. For example, I was just really affected by that because the government doesn't have a trace of my rent. So it would be nice in the future when there is something that's improved, so maybe a bit lower taxes for landlords so that they're more, it's like an incentive for them to give contracts so that more immigrant money can be on the book. Because a lot of landlords, especially Portuguese, I'm sorry to say, we're taking advantage of that. The horror stories that I've heard. On top of that, I feel like this is my only experience where, well, this is my only really rental experience, but it's like they want you to rent the place but not live there. So there's so many rules. You can't use the fridge like this, you can't put that there, you can't walk there, You can't do this there. You can't sit there. You can't have your mom come over to check on you, to visit you. You can't have a friend over for dinner. There's so much mold in the apartment that they won't fix. There's so much this. So I feel like you're paying, but there is no respect for that. Not for every landlord, of course, but there are several landlords that are taking advantage negatively of the system. And I feel like that's where the inhumanity comes in Portugal. The accommodation experience, the housing experience is expensive, and that's a crisis in and of itself. But how tenants are treated is also a crisis as well. So if you're moving here, I would say that be prepared to probably have not that good rental experience. From the 4 places I lived, the first place I lived was a good experience. I had a good landlord. They weren't Portuguese, but they were good. My problem with that place was just one of my flatmates, but that had nothing to do with the landlord. But my landlord was good, respectful, honest, trustworthy. The last place, the 4th place, was also the same. My landlord was Portuguese, but there was so much autonomy. There wasn't this sense of control or keeping an eye on us in the apartment. So I really appreciate that. The 4th place actually was a place that felt the most like home. The average price to find a bedroom, I would say, is like 450 euros minimum. And there are bedrooms renting up to 1,000 euros in Lisbon, which is just ridiculous. Because the minimum wage in Lisbon is like, I think it's 765 euros. Let's just say 800 euros legally. If you're earning 800 euros, how can you survive? How can you survive renting a place for 500 euros a month? One of my flatmates, even Portuguese are being affected by that, because one of my flatmates, she was a Portuguese nurse and she was earning like just 800 euros a month, and her rent was like 420 euros a month. It's hard to survive on that when you factor in food, you factor in transportation and all of that. Like renting an apartment now, like a 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, you need like at least 1,500, 1,800, 2,000 to actually find a place. But in terms of scarcity, I could be wrong, but I wouldn't say that apartments are scarce. I would just say that it's just expensive and the terms and conditions are just ridiculous. So probably be prepared that landlords are gonna ask for a lot of months deposit up front. A lot of the immigrants who are moving to Portugal with a salary, for example, like they're retired and maybe they're earning their retirement monthly remuneration. Is that the right word? Like monthly remuneration, or their retirement monthly income is like 4,000 or 3,500 euros a month. That is way more than most people in Portugal will earn. And the thing is, people in those positions, they don't really question the prices that much. So if a landlord is giving them a ridiculous price, them accepting that price without challenge, I get that they need the apartment, it affects everyone else. So I wanted to also add regarding the housing thing, just in case you are looking for housing. So for me, I always looked on idealista.pt, and I will put it on the screen. I will put it somewhere, idealista.pt. I know you have other websites like OLX, I think it's called OLX, and also Facebook. Facebook helps sometimes, but it's more scammy. But idealista.pt is where I've always found my rooms. They have a lot of rooms. They have a lot of apartments. And Facebook is my second recommendation, especially when you join groups. You can always find someone posting about a room or an apartment. So yeah, I would recommend. After 3 years living in Portugal, the job market, I have to say, is very difficult. The salary here is 4 euros an hour. Legally, I think it's 4.6 euros an hour. If you don't want to work in a call center like Teleperformance, it's very difficult. I mean, as a young person, it's so disappointing. Like for me, I felt like my career confidence was just deflated because of how difficult it has been to find a job. Well, I will have to like update my experience in finding a job because I kind of just finished like my master, so I haven't had enough time to do job search in Portugal. But let me just rephrase that by saying it's just more difficult than I expected it to be. I think there's a huge scarcity to start. The other thing is also Portuguese are struggling to find a job. And if you're looking for a job in Portugal, like 7 times out of 10, you need to speak Portuguese. It's a good thing that Portuguese will be considered over you to get the job because they're also looking for a job. That's their country. They were born there. They're looking for a job. So if they don't pass the qualifications, then maybe you will have the opportunity to get that job. But the other side of that is like Lisbon is also booming. I would say a lot of not a lot of companies. There are companies that are like creating their head offices in Lisbon or in Portugal. So there are new opportunities opening up for Portuguese speakers, locals, but also non-locals as well. So you find different job opportunities opening up in these newly built offices, in these companies that requires you to only speak English because they just have an office there, but they are still an English-speaking company with English-speaking clients. With that said, I feel like a lot of companies also are recruiting residents of Portugal or citizens of Portugal to pay less in wages. And this is problematic because you may have someone from, let's reference Sweden again, Sweden, and they're doing the same job as you, but they're earning much more. You may have a company that, let's say they're based in the USA and they opened an office in Lisbon, and you are getting paid 1/5 of what someone in the US is earning when your expenses are the same. As I said before regarding the housing crisis, how expensive apartments are, if you're not earning more than 2K per month net in Portugal, it's very difficult to even have your own apartment. So what I've realized is that people are having roles in companies, but they're sharing facilities. They don't even have their own place. So when they go to their 9-to-5 job working for this company, having this big role, this nice role, they're going home to living with 5 other strangers and sharing a bathroom with 7 people, which is not okay. Because when I do interviews, I remember once I did an interview and she was like,
"Oh yeah, what we're paying is much higher than what you would earn in Portugal."
Yes, it is much higher, but it is necessary because if you pay me any less, I can't survive. I'm gonna be living hand to mouth. Do you want me to not be able to even afford to have my own place, to start a family, to finish my studies, just because you think that, oh, I don't need more than that, you know, because I'm based in Portugal and you're gauging the salary from, I don't know what they're gauging the salary from, and I didn't say that because I wanted to be respectful. It depends which industry you're in. If you're in the IT industry, it's easier to find a job. The IT industry is really booming here. When you're an immigrant, you're an expat and you don't have family, it's harder because when I was living in Jamaica in my family home, I could be earning minimum wage or half minimum wage, but it doesn't matter when you're in a family home because you're not paying rent. You're not really buying all of your food. And family support doesn't have to be financial. Just having your family around makes you thrive a bit more than someone who does not. And I'm not saying that, oh yeah, people made the choice to move to Portugal. They did, but I'm just being honest about my perspective. So After 3 years in Portugal, I want to talk about what has been like my community experience, making friends, meeting people. So initially when I moved in the first year, I had a big difficulty making friends. Reason being, the church I was going to, it was Portuguese speaking and I didn't know any Portuguese, so I often felt lost and alone. Plus they were very nice, but not as embracing. I feel like they didn't realize it, but just coming to church and just a little talking afterwards and just me standing there not understanding what's going on, or sometimes people speak with me in English, just wasn't sufficient. I just still felt isolated. So yeah, I went to 2 churches before I found the one that I was going to now. So yeah, in the beginning, having friends, making friends and having community was difficult because of the isolation that I experienced, because of the language and just because of maybe I didn't really click with the people that I was around. And even when I was studying, I felt like the community and that I expected from my colleagues, it didn't really happen as I expected it. You know, I expected to be like a little bit more bosom friends with my colleagues. Maybe I wasn't the one, maybe I didn't like initiate very well like a friendship, because I can be very quiet and withdrawn sometimes, but I expected to make like good friends with my colleagues, but it didn't work out like that. It ended up being more like a colleague to colleague or like work relationship. So the positive turning point in my community here came when I started attending my church. And I started making friends. So many people come there that, you know, you can find the people that you connect with easier. It's like the church itself brings people together. It's up to you to find your group. But because it brings so many people together, the chances of you finding your people, your group, is really high. And it creates this atmosphere of engagement, this atmosphere of warmth, this atmosphere of love, this atmosphere, it breaks down the barriers of communication and promotes that friendship. So I ended up making good friends from the church, and that sort of gave me the boost that I needed, because I would say that community here is the most important thing. Aside, you can have the best job, you can have a great apartment, but if you don't have your people, your community, friends here, you will feel isolated and lonely, because I felt that. And I also found some community with my team, because I play football with the local team. Oh yes, I found community with some Caribbean, Jamaican, with some Caribbean, Jamaican people. So that's nice. What I want to say is that Lisbon, Portugal overall is such it's a sweet spot for a community. There's so many people wanting to connect that you can find someone like that's your groove. If you're interested in hiking, you can find a hiking community, then you can make friends. If you're interested in art, you can find an art community. If you're someone who works from home, you can find a work from home community. My best advice is going on Facebook. There's a lot of groups there, a lot of meetups going on, and also Meetup is an app itself. You can find different events going on where you can meet your people. So I think my friends and my community has definitely been a success, and I think it won't be a problem for you. I would say finding community in Portugal is relatively easy compared to where I've lived before, the other countries that I've lived before.
First time Chantel is seeing, how do you say this in English?
Ostriches.
So you have done a lot of first times in Portugal.
Yeah, a lot of first time.
Border is a life-saving help when you are moving to Portugal, because the bureaucracy, well, I don't want to say girl, because I checked my whole analytics and I have mostly male followers. Shout out to my male followers. Anyways, the bureaucracy in Portugal will have your head spinning. So if you have the money, just invest and get some help. So Border, I'll put the link here. I'll put my affiliate link below. You get $10 off or 10% off. I will clarify in the description. So I use Border to get my NIF number. When you move to Portugal, you need a NIF number. You need a NIF number. It's, yeah, there's no question. It's like a social security number when you compare it to America. Well, in terms of importance, necessity, and compulsoriness, if that's the word. So yeah, I paid about 150 US dollars. I don't know where it is right now, and I got my NIF number in like a week. Now they've extended their services. I believe now they offer like help to get your NIS number, if I'm not wrong, NISS, which is your actual social security number in Portugal. And now they extend their services to helping you file your taxes, which is very important to get it right. They also help with opening a bank account, and they're also coming with more and more services. So I will put a link in the comments, probably the description, maybe here, could be, and you can check it out and book something. So your girl can earn a little something to buy some coffee. On that note, I have a buy me a coffee link. If I have given you any knowledge that has helped you, you can click my buy me a coffee link. You should see it on the banner on my channel, the little coffee, the little yellow box. I can also put it in the comments. I can also put it in the description. I'll put everything in the description. I hope I remember. And especially if you are reaching out to me on my email, Instagram, I'm not charging you to give information. I will give you all the time and research that you need, because I'm a research girly. I have a background in research, anthropology, all of that. Anyway, so feel free to buy me a coffee. And even if you just want to support me and just support others, maybe you don't need info, but you want to buy me a coffee to help me to fund and fuel my efforts in helping others, that would also be appreciated. The other thing I want to say, that I started a Facebook group for students wanting to move to Portugal, and this is like a test for a bigger thing that I want to launch in the future. So if you want to join that Facebook group, it's not that active, and in the future I would want some help to moderate the Facebook group, but right now I just want to grow it. If you want to join that Facebook group to connect with more students moving to Portugal, to ask me questions, so when I'm answering the questions I can just put it as a post so everyone like else can see the answers and new people can see the answers, click the link in the description and also in the comments. Probably I put it in the comment, or I'm gonna put the name of the Facebook group here. But anyways, thank you for coming to my video. It's been long awaited. I hope you liked it. I hope, you know, you missed my face. I hope it was helpful in some way. Please engage in the comments, because even though I'm inactive, as you can see, I try to respond to as many comments as possible. So I'm quite active with responding to comments. Anyways, guys, that's the end of the video. If you found it helpful in any way, please subscribe, like, comment, share. If you want me to make a video about Portugal or anything, comment below. And if you agree with that comment, please like, so I can know how many people really would like a video like that. Thank you for watching. Bye. See you in another video. Wow, I can say that again. Bye.